What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we had a pretty major leak hit Nintendo, which has one of their games that's not out for actually a couple of weeks show up online, and now of course you have people starting to post things all over the place, so we're gonna go over that here today. No spoilers, of course. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony and a big update that is now live for the PlayStation 5, and it's one we've been hearing about for a bit that actually adds more customization to the platform. And then we also have a very shocking exodus that just happened where seemingly all of Annapurna Interactive decided to just leave, and we'll see what exactly happened there. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Tony Hawk Pro Skater, hopefully. Well, it is Tony Hawk Pro Skater, but the video game series that seemingly made a return and then went on hiatus when Vicarious Visions was absorbed into Blizzard to help work on some of the Diablo games. But it appears they could be preparing some actual announcement here that hopefully will have fans of the franchise excited again. We can see this is posted up, this over on VGC. And they say, speaking on Mythical Kitchen, the legendary skater said that there is something planned for the anniversary, but wouldn't be drawn on specifics, saying, quote, "I wish I could tell you more, but I can tell you that I've been talking to Activision again. We're working on something." Going on to say, it will be something the fans will truly appreciate. So back in 2022, it was claimed, as they say, that Tony Hawk had mentioned that parts 3 and 4, they were doing that. So we have 1 and 2, of course, that thrown together into like this compilation remaster. And then we were going to have a remake. Then we were going to have a remake of 3 and 4 combined. And that sounded exciting because 3 was it was a legitimate step up. Obviously, went to a new generation. There's a lot of extra features added in there, and for many, that's their favorite one. Now, there's also the potential of Underground, could do something there maybe, and my hope is it's a new video game in the franchise, even if it's based on the older titles, just something new in the series to show that there is still interest within Activision around something like this. So here's hoping they have something they can announce later on. Also, in a very random twist, it appears that Flappy Bird is making a return. Kind of. This is posted by Wario64, and it says, Flappy Bird, the iconic mobile gaming classic enjoyed by more than 100 million people, officially returns after flying the coop more than a decade ago. Okay, and then we see the screenshots, and that does not look like Flappy Bird. Now, there's a lot of questions around this release, mostly because it's not seemingly the same person behind the original. It's like another company that's decided to come in and I guess pick up the trademark for it, and they've created the first Flappy Bird, the original, looked cheap, right? This somehow looks cheaper, actually, so I'm not really sure what to make of this other than I wouldn't look at this as the original Flappy Bird making a return, and it's hard to say what the intentions are of the new company behind it because it seems like there's microtransactions, other things added onto it, so hard to say there. Also, I wasn't really big in the Flappy Bird, so I'm not really sure what to expect from this versus the original, but if you were really into Flappy Bird, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts were when you saw this and the screenshots that were shared. Oh, and in unsurprising news, it appears that Microsoft has moved to lay off more employees. We can see this is posted up over on The Verge. Say Microsoft was laying off around 650 employees in its gaming division. By the way, this is on top of the sum of 1,900 Activision Blizzard and Xbox employees that have already been laid off, so it's now over 2,500 total. Remember, that included Redfall developer Arcane Austin, right? That was thrown in there. Now, Phil Spencer seems to mention this is aligning with their post-acquisition team structure and managing their business. He does say that no games, devices, or experiences being canceled, but this just continues to tack on to the number of layoffs we've seen over the last seemingly now 2 years, and they just continue to mount. But especially with Microsoft, it just seems like they have really laid off a ton of their workforce, seemingly after that Activision Blizzard acquisition, of course, as I'm sure many redundant positions were formed, but also them just seemingly cutting down on expenses constantly as they've gone through this last year. And something tells me this probably won't be the last we hear about layoffs at Xbox, as it seems like every time we feel like they're done, they continue to tack on more. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a pretty sizable leak that's hit Nintendo, because it's for a game that's not out for another 2 weeks, and it's, for a lot of people, it's their most anticipated title for the year for their Switch, and that's The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. And I will say, this game looks extremely creative, a different twist on the top-down Zelda games that we've been used to for decades now. And that's one of the reasons this one in particular concerns me, because naturally, once this leaks online, people don't even need a Switch necessarily. They can feed it into an emulator and then just start screenshotting and recording footage, and before you know it, you're looking on YouTube and there is somehow a thumbnail of the final boss right in front of you for a game that's still not out for a few weeks. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it to your attention here today, because seemingly out of nowhere, it popped up on the typical sources and sites that people would grab a lot of these games from. But the thing that's very odd about this is we are so far removed from we're so far away from the release date. This seems sooner than usual for these things. Now, we did have the infamous leak for Tears of the Kingdom that was well before its release, but it also didn't feel like it was this early on. So I'm actually curious how exactly this one happened with Echoes of Wisdom, because it could, I guess, be just early distribution, whether it's maybe for reviews that are out there, although Nintendo does keep that locked down pretty tightly now. So the only thing I think of is not even necessarily breaking street date at retail, because they would not have them now, but breaking street date basically from distribution, maybe at different Amazon centers or warehouses that are stocking and preparing to send them out to big box retail stores. And I'm mostly bringing this up just to help you try to avoid any kind of spoilers you can. This is the moment to start muting any keywords, because I feel like at this time, looking at what Nintendo's shown us, I've seen enough, and it's almost getting to the point where I feel like if they keep showing any more, they themselves, Nintendo, will wade into the territory of spoiling their own audience for some of this stuff. So yeah, this might be the moment where you want to kind of go dark on Echoes of Wisdom at this point online as we work towards the 26th of September. Nintendo now really leaning into those Thursday releases, but it's going to be tough. As I mentioned, you're going to see a lot of recordings, screenshots. People will probably be data mining the thing constantly, looking for any bits of information they can find. So just putting that out there. Yes, if you see forum threads about spoilers and how people are playing it, technically people can play it. And I'm sure this is another situation where Nintendo is going to take note, as they have not been very happy with stuff breaking street date and getting out there early. Go figure, as that's one of the things, along with, I'm sure, costs and distribution behind the scenes, that is probably keeping them from sending these things out, say, to Amazon quite early, right? So when you have warehouses and stuff that these things seem to leak out from, it makes sense why Nintendo's being very, very careful about these physical copies. But yes, Echoes of Wisdom out there now technically in the wild, so be careful. Next up, let's talk about a big update actually for the PlayStation 5. And this is one that's been described to me multiple times now from Ryan over on the Mystic Ryan channel. In fact, I believe he did a video really diving into details and sort of showing this update off, as he's had, I believe, this exact update, or like an earlier one just from like a preview build as part of like the early program for PlayStation, checking out the Welcome Hub, which sounds actually pretty cool to have as something that, yes, can welcome you when you turn your PlayStation 5 on, but also a way for you to customize what you see just sort of at a glance. Now, we can see this is posted up over on PlayStation's blog. And they do mention that this update will be rolling out gradually across regions. It appears at this time it's pretty much just available in the US, as that's where it was earlier in like sort of its beta phase was available. They do also mention the party share. It's the ability to share party voice chat links on messaging and social media apps. That will also roll out globally in the coming weeks. But the main focus has been on the Welcome Hub. In fact, they have a video here showing this off a bit. And basically you have a tab, which when you log in, you can see it there on your dashboard, and you can customize it with all kinds of stuff. They do give a few examples here with the different widgets. That includes console storage, which I will admit there are a few times I've gone through and looked to install something and didn't even really think about it. I mean, I do have a sizable NVMe drive in my PlayStation 5, but if I didn't and I was trying to be more mindful of my storage, that's actually not a bad idea to have that right there at a glance, where you can see it as almost like a circle that's filling up right in the percentage. You also have battery levels for your accessories, your online friends, trophies, and you can use these presets to change around your layout very, very quickly. Maybe you want one that's all about your accessories, and maybe you want others that are all about your friends and the trophies and games and stuff they're playing. You can also change the size of your widgets, and you could change the background. They even show you pulling it from your media gallery here. So there you go. We have some actual customization for the console, which is something I feel like we've lost more and more as we've gotten into this generation. The ability just to be able to customize your different systems and consoles has always been something that people have enjoyed. So I do like that the idea is being implemented here in some way, as I know that with the dashboard, even for like the PS5, for example, it is set up in a mindful way to really center around that one game that you're highlighting. A few other things mentioned here: personalize 3D audio profiles for headphones and earbuds, adjust remote play settings per user so you can allow some and maybe not others to use remote play for your PS5, and then adaptive charging for your controller, so it will change how much power, say, it's outputting to a controller as it's charging. Maybe it's getting more and more full, it won't need as much power, then it becomes more of a trickle charge. But they do mention it's available for slimmer PS5 model and PS5 Pro when it's available, not necessarily for the older first generation, we'll say PS5, which is interesting, but still, nonetheless, the big one there being the Welcome Hub actually sounds like a really cool tool to use when you log in, just to get a summary at a glance for everything happening on your PlayStation 5. Just make sure you check your PS5 through updates and see when you're eligible to get this one, whether it's in the US or, again, as they mentioned, rolling out globally over time. Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts, which does give us our first look at Astrobot sales in Japan. A reminder, these are physical sales, and with Astrobot, technically it's the first, 2 days of sales. This is preemptively preparing you, I guess, for the number you're about to see here, which will also work to try to explain a bit, as I'm sure some cope is being mixed in there. But anyway, let's take a look at the Famitsu sales charts, starting right away with a challenge as I attempt to pronounce this. Here we go. Toho, Danmaku, Kagura, Fantasia, Lost. Last time I tried to pronounce something, it did overwhelm the comments, so let me know how I did there. Anyway, 16,631 copies. Astrobot was number 2, debuting with 12,672 copies, which it's not necessarily great for a big 3D platformer that you would hope would maybe appeal a bit more here in this case for Japan, as opposed to some of Sony's other properties. Not so much, at least here from what we're seeing with this number. I will say, all right, that Astrobot, there were reports that it had sold out in many different stores, that some were being noted in Tokyo, for example, and then we did see it sell out on Amazon Japan. So it is possible it also didn't get a lot of stock. We will see in the coming weeks if that is correct or not, because if it did sell out, you should still see it continue on and not drop off substantially, say, in the 3rd, 4th, even 5th week. We also have Ace Attorney Investigations Collection. That sold 10,502. Then we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Nintendo Switch Sports, Pretty Derby, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Gundam Breaker 4, Power Pros 2024-2025, and then Ring Fit Adventure. Moving over to the hardware, the Switch actually climbed to 67,473. That's very impressive for that console around this time in its life cycle. That's quite a few units there. Then we have the PS5 that dropped off incredibly because, of course, that price tag has now kicked in, where went up like $90 or something. So yeah, it's going to drop off quite substantially. The Xbox Series, on the other hand, just about doubled, up to 1,482 units. And the PlayStation 3 fell too, but I mean, I can't believe those things are even being sold at all at this point. 23 of them moved. Now, on top of that, we do have some good news actually here for Astrobot, as Christopher Dring says that the Astrobot's UK launch is solid. First week sales are 21% higher than the debut of Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart in 2021. Astro was number 2 last week behind Space Marine 2, which is the UK's fastest selling Warhammer game, beating Total War Warhammer 3. More in the next GI Microcast. So that's at least good news, because originally it sounded like it was tracking behind Ratchet & Clank when you just count physical copies. You throw digital in there, all of a sudden it jumps ahead of Ratchet & Clank. And that's kind of the baseline I wanted to see Astrobot sell, was have Astrobot sell right around Ratchet & Clank. And a lot of that comes down to, yes, the budget, or the amount of money it cost, obviously, to make the game is lower than a lot of the big AAA Sony titles that we typically see. So expectations around sales aren't through the roof, 10 million or bust, nothing like that. So if it can reach or exceed Ratchet & Clank, we'll say 3 to 4 million lifetime, I think that's a win for Asobi, but I still feel like this game should do better than that in terms of the quality and the reception it's seen online and its appeal for the general audience. So not a great debut in terms of just raw numbers that we're getting, but we'll see how it how it did in places like the US, for example, and how it did digitally, if Sony is ever willing to share those numbers in the future. I guess we'll see. Hopefully, by next month, we'll start with the Circana report and find out how it did in the US. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a very unexpected series of events that have happened here. As it appears, Annapurna's video game division, well, everyone just kind of walked out. They just left. And I saw this announcement. It was broken through Bloomberg with Jason Schreier, and I just said, what? And that seemed to be the collective reaction across the internet. Let's start though here with the report. Again, this is from Jason Schreier, and I'll have a link down below as there is a lot of information being packed in here. But it says the entire staff of Annapurna Interactive, the video game publishing division of Megan Ellison's Annapurna Studio, resigned this month following a dispute with its owner. The president, Nathan Gary, and his team had been negotiating with Ellison, the daughter of billionaire Larry Ellison, to spin off the video game division as an independent entity. So basically, think about how we saw it with Toys for Bob, right? Where they successfully negotiated with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard and that, and they spun off into being an independent studio. It appears they were trying to do something like that here, and talks fell through. So this is a quote from Nathan saying, all 25 members of the Annapurna Interactive team collectively resigned. This was one of the hardest decisions we have ever had to make, and we did not take this action lightly. The spokesperson said that all existing games and projects will remain under Annapurna. So, I mean, they are still working on a bunch of games, of course, and there has been a lot of collaboration with, so it's Annapurna Interactive and then Annapurna Pictures. They do a lot of the TV and movies, that sort of thing, but because they all kind of work on similar properties, you have, for example, the deal they struck with Remedy that would have Annapurna work to co-finance Control 2, and in return, they would have the rights for TV or movies with Control and Alan Wake. So you see how there's some crossover there between video game and movie and film and media. They're going to say the new president, Hector Sanchez, has told developers that the company will honor existing contracts and replace staff who have left, according to people who asked to not be identified because the conversations were private. And again, this was surprising, but then also, on the other hand, in the current climate we're in, where we are just seeing studios go away left and right and things like this happening, where one day you wake up and they're just a studio just being completely shut down by a bigger parent company. This is at least Annapurna Interactive, or a lot of the people who are working there, again, 25 of them, be able to just kind of go out on their own terms, say, no, we're resigning, we're out. It almost makes you think that maybe they're going off to make their own studio, like they were trying to spin off here to become independent. So it just seems like maybe they're going to go do that. And it puts Annapurna in a very awkward position where they just lost, like, probably all of, or at least a very significant portion of their video game division. And now their solution is just hire and replace all of them, which will probably be pretty difficult, and it will most likely lead to a lot of bit of a learning curve there, especially with, I'm sure, many partners who are like halfway through or knee deep in their current development, and they're like ready to go, but now you have all these new people coming in, and it sounds like chaos, and that's kind of what's being described here by Bloomberg. So check out that article, but wow, just chaos right now breaking out at Annapurna with all kinds of indie games and film and TV, everything kind of hanging in the balance there. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask if GTA 6 gets a significant enhancement with the PS5 Pro, let's just say 60 FPS, better visuals, would you buy the new console? 13% say yes, 87% say no. That's actually still falling in line with what my projection for the number of people who will buy a PS5 Pro versus a regular PS5. I'm still thinking like 1 in 8, 1 in 7, somewhere in there. So this is about that. It's close to that, right? So I do think that GTA 6 could work to move the needle if it has those enhancements, but there's still a lot of doubt around GTA 6 being 60 FPS on the PlayStation 5 Pro, which sounds weird because you see this $700 system, $800 system, $900 system, depending on the region, and you go, well, yeah, clearly that's going to play GTA 6 at 60 frames, and it's like, no, it doesn't. Okay, that just feels like it defeats the entire purpose of this thing existing if you don't have a substantial jump, considering we've seen the choice between the toggle, performance or fidelity. Most gamers are picking performance because they want the higher frame rate, so maybe they're buying the PS5 Pro looking for just that. Better frame rate, better visuals to go along with that. But if there's not a better frame rate there when you buy it, you're kind of going to feel like you wasted your money. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from one who says, all of the things the Pro is supposed to do, the standard PS5 was supposed to do at launch. Some of that stuff was even on the boxes of the PS5, and they removed it from the boxes. The fact that they showed 5-year-old PS5 launch games that were supposed to have these features on base PS5 to advertise this is crazy to me. I don't think they did a very good job showcasing the system at all, which it's actually kind of head-scratching. That's the part. Not necessarily that the system exists because, look, it's a low-volume, enthusiast machine, all right? I think most people understand that. The regular PS5 still exists, and actually it's become cheaper with the refurbished products, now down to $350. But when you see this machine, you'd like to understand, okay, what exactly makes this thing stand out? Why would it be sold? Why is it special? And they just did a bad job. Like, hey, here's a PS4 game. Last of Us Part 2. Let's show you these side-by-side images that are incredibly hard to see through this compressed stream. And everyone's like, what's going on here? I think it would have been a good idea to get Digital Foundry more involved, as they clearly have the tech and the know-how to be able to analyze and present it in a more meaningful and understandable way. And unfortunately, it seems like Sony has dropped the ball across the board, because even CNET wasn't able to capture directly. So we're basically just going to wait until we get closer to its release, or maybe even on release, to get actual footage even of this thing working from an independent source. And that does sound kind of crazy for a $700 machine. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll have it linked up here in the box. Or maybe you wanted to see some of the horror stories I went through when it came to customers attempting to fix their own Xbox 360 console. It'll be right below that. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.